In the end, a man finally looks at the sum of his life to see what he'll leave behind. And now, as the darkness descends, I find that I have no real legacy. Now, before people jump to conclusions, that is a quote from the cigarette smoking man in an episode of The X-Files, which I am currently plowing through to get them all done and completed before the new miniseries comes out here later this month. And if you know me really well, then you know that one of my favorite topics to talk about and obsess with is legacy. What are people going to think about me when I'm gone? How will I be remembered? Who is going to remember me in the first place? And so these ideas have been percolating in my head because of watching The X-Files again, and because I'm also reading John Green's book, An Abundance of Catherines, for the first time. Colin, our main character in that book, struggles a lot with being labeled either a prodigy or a genius, and really wants to know how his legacy is going to be remembered. This comes in stark contrast with another character in the book that he meets who feels that you shouldn't want to have a legacy, that searching for fame and fortune and the type of lifestyle that would require leaving a legacy in the first place is only going to lead you to just having a terrible life. Now, my own thoughts on this topic, which has led me to this new theory that I've been battling with for the last couple months, is that a legacy is really not something that you have any direct control over. At least not really. A legacy is something that other people bring to your work, whether they find value with it, whether they find it reprehensible, whether they're kind of mediocre about it. You don't really have a say on what your legacy is going to be. So let's take an example of specifically Bill Cosby, because if we looked at him 20 years ago, his legacy would have been America's dad and breaking down all these barriers for network television. And now, what do we have but a lecherous old man who date raped countless women on his rise to popularity? Now, in both of those cases, Bill Cosby absolutely had actions that helped perpetrate what people thought about him, but at the end of the day, it's the people that are experiencing his work or his actions that cause people to remember him in the way that they remember him now. So that's just some fancy little wordplay that we can work with and some logic problems that we can kind of fight with. But at the end of the day, you know what, let's do this. Let me take you back. Let me take you back to a time where I'm little Kyle. And little Kyle, even though he's still a ginormous person for his age, is sitting on his couch and being like, I love this popcorn that I'm eating. My mom fed me a lot of popcorn because at that time I was 60% corn. So were my jokes. And at that time, I would have had two obsessions in my life. And the first one would have been professional wrestling, and the second would have been professional comedy. What's the deal with that? Ow. I'm going to keep that in. So, in both of those cases, in my eyes, the legacy of these comedians or these wrestlers was that they were putting on this show and they were putting on this an engrossing performance for me. Comedians, wrestlers either commit suicide, die of drug overdose, or just leave very unfulfilling lives. And you don't see that in the performance, or normally you don't see that in the performance, and yet what they're able to do on stage or in that squared circle is something that is entirely engrossing to me. And so because I am super pretentious and consider myself, in some ways at least, an artist, which I know is a dirty word to say about yourself, but I do consider myself trying to do that, whether it's through this vlogging or through my writing or through all the other various artistic projects that I do in my daily life. One of those things I feel has the chance of breaking through and leaving a mark on somebody else. Because really, at the end of the day, if all I'm doing is making stuff and throwing it out into the void that no one is consuming or no one is, I guess, being changed by or entertained by, it's a very masturbatory process. And although that's fun, it eventually leads to just being messy. As far as a legacy goes, I don't know if I can be fulfilled at this point in my life if I just led an ordinary life, a mundane life, a mediocre life. I want something more than that, and that is the height of first-person problems. It is the height of being so incredibly narcissistic about yourself, and yet this is where I am. I live in North America, a place that is fairly narcissistic in and of itself, and I'm falling into that well of trouble, which is much better than the well of double trouble, which just leads you to a really bad Elvis movie. points to anyone who understands that joke. I guess what it comes down to for me is that I want to be remembered as somebody who is great. But I guess I really shouldn't start obsessing about that until I start doing great things. And who knows when that's going to be. Well, thank you everyone for watching. My name is Kyle. I upload videos every Thursday. Every week I also sorta co-host a podcast called Whatever This Is. A link to that and all of my social media is down in the description below. What do you think your legacy will be? Let me know down in the comments below. A place where you can always be remembered fondly and also not.